compared to other schools, I could say that Philippine Women's has a lot of advantage. I've been to one of the Ivy League universities before, and the tuition fee is quite a lot compared here to this school. So for Philippine Women's, it comes in 3 semesters. The tuition fee is not that expensive, faster time, and we could still learn a lot. One of the reasons why I chose this school is mainly because of the location. It's super accessible.
I did choose BW University because of the way they approached me from the beginning, starting from the door guard, ending with the school dean interview. Everyone was friendly. They helped me to fit in from the first moment. They answered all my questions in a manner that I understand and in a perspective that I can relate to. Everyone was very friendly. I fit in from the first time.
We, as the student, we feel comfortable with the friendly environment. That helps us not just to enjoy the way of education we had here, but also to learn more, innovate more, and grow more as a student.
In here, I can make more motivation with many other activity in school because in here many activity. The second is no stress because I can confident, comfortable in this school. So I think Philippine Women University is my good choice.
My student days here was it was a very refreshing, at the same time a learning experience for me, because PWU made me a very well-rounded person. Aside from the academics, I am very much active in extracurricular activities. Life here, it's different because we're not confined within the department. I learned how to interact with different students in different departments, like for example in the HRM department, in fine arts department. We don't have any barriers here. We are like a family here in this institution. That's what PWU is different from different schools. I hope that the students would enroll here because they will learn things that they would use in the future as they go outside in the real world, and they would use it to improve themselves more and to be successful in their chosen career in the future. I am Mary Antoinette Salgado, a graduate of Bachelor of Science in Accountancy here in Philippine Women's University.
The Philippine Women's University was founded in 1919 by 7 forward-looking Filipinas who envisioned education as a means of uplifting the status of women. Since the 1970s, PWU has been co-educational, and today's campus, located in the heart of Manila, is dynamic and diverse.
The reason I choose Philippine Women University is I can easily enroll with the test, and the semester in here, 1 year has 3 semesters with 1 summer semester, so I can graduate soon. The second is no stress because I can confident, comfortable in this school. So I think Philippine Women University is my good choice.
Everyone was friendly. They helped me to fit in from the first moment. They answer all my questions in a manner that I understand and in a perspective that I can relate to.
PWU has pioneered in innovative research and produced thousands of graduates who are recognized as leaders in their respective fields. PWU's College of Music and Arts was founded in 1947 and is today recognized as a Center of Excellence by the Philippines Commission on Higher Education for the quality of its research and the excellence in its teaching methods.
"1919 was an auspicious year in history. The First World War ended, ushering a drastic change in the world order. The Philippine Islands had been a U.S. territory for 2 decades and was promised independence under the Jones Law of 1916. Progressive reformers saw the country and its people as a major target for modernization, and education was its main weapon. 7 forward-looking Filipinas came together in 1919 to create a school where young women could gain the knowledge and skills that would make them modern women. Paz Marquez Benitez was the first president of the Philippine Women's College. Jose Abad Santos was its first chairman of the Board of Trustees. Francisca Tirona Benitez was the second president, and with her husband Dean Conrado, guided the school from a house on A. Flores Street to its iconic Taft Avenue campus. In 1932, the college became a university, making PWU the first university for women in Asia founded by Asians. It provided a space where innovations in education flourished and young people were encouraged to be the best that they could be. For over 100 years, the Philippine Women's University has been known as a leader in quality education. In 1934, PWU moved into its main campus on Taft Avenue, and since the 1970s has been co-educational. Located in the heart of Metro Manila, it is easily accessible by public transport and surrounded by affordable housing. Today's PWU offers undergraduate and graduate courses in several fields of study. Its business and management programs are responsive to the needs of industry, using evolving technology for global competence. PWU graduates excel in arts and sciences, education, social work, and diplomacy. Its fine arts and music programs have produced outstanding graduates through a holistic education that treasures heritage as well as excellence. PWU has pioneered in fields such as food science, nutrition and dietetics, medical technology, pharmacy, and nursing. PWU continues to play an essential role in producing graduates who possess the skills that make them competitive in the country and anywhere in the world.
Hello, everyone. We would like to greet everyone a pleasant Wednesday afternoon. We are thankful to all of you for attending this webinar despite the unsettling health concerns. Amidst all of these, we are determined to pursue our studies as future healthcare professionals and economic frontliners. So just relax and watch us on YouTube. We promise it will be worth your time.
Good afternoon and welcome to another event of high-impact discussion brought to you by the School of Medical Technology. Just a reminder, may we request everyone in the virtual room to make sure that your microphones are muted and cameras are turned off until necessary.
I am Camille Miranda.
And I am Saida Recto, your Masters of Ceremonies. To formally commence, let us take a moment of silence to invoke the presence of the Almighty and pay respects to the national anthem.
Kayang magiging pero saan sinanganan, alam ng puso sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, buyat ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisiid, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa lagi kong bakaw, may dilagang tulat, awis at paglayang minamahal. Ang kisap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagdidigdig. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidigig. Lupa ng araw ng at ito't sinabay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya dapat may mga aming ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Today, we are celebrating the 54th founding anniversary of the School of Medical Technology, which coincides with the Medical Technology Week. Our history and accomplishments in education is something to be proud of and is worth celebrating.
To our medical technologists and clinical laboratory scientists here and abroad, we salute you. I hope that you continue in your commitment and significant role in the healthcare system. To us all, happy Medical Technology Week.
At this juncture, our very own School of Medical Technology Program Chair will introduce the aims and highlight the contents of this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Professor Sherwin B. Toriano.
With gladness, let me greet you all a pleasant afternoon. Joining us today are our esteemed guests, representatives from the academic community and the health sector. Our President, Mr. Marco Alfredo Benitez, the Chancellor and the Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Felina C. Young, administrators and department heads of various schools, the faculty members and staff, our dear students, and to all those watching in their homes. I am delighted and honored to welcome all of you in our virtual webinar. This week is extraordinary because we are celebrating the 54th founding anniversary of the School of Medical Technology, and this is fused with the Medical Technology Week celebration. Yes, we are now more than half a century in educating medical technologists, which is our contribution to nation building. Indulge me for a moment as I look back. In 1967, we started as the Institute of Medical Technology, offering the degree program, Bachelor of Science in Medical Technology, which was first conceived by Dr. Nelly Herrera. From then on, we actively moved forward, achieving milestones and writing history. In 1970, the Philippine Women's University Institute of Medical Technology became one of the first member schools of the Philippine Association of Schools of Medical Technology, with Dr. Elvira Silva, the director, of the Institute of Medical Science and Technology then. And in 1988, the Philippine Women's University Institute of Medical Science and Technology was the very first medical technology school in the Philippines to undergo PAASCO accreditation. In that same year, we also opened the Master of Science in Medical Technology program. Our alumni are highly respected in both the academe and the professional organizations here and abroad. In 2006, we were re-established and we became the School of Medical Technology. With our enduring passion, we opened yet another program, Master of Science in Health Systems Management, that was in 2008. In more recent years, we ride high in the achievements of our students. They competed and were victorious in the Laboratory Olympics, and for several years, we kept a winning streak in the board examinations. Truly, our school's endeavors and continuing achievements academically and professionally are a legacy that we can be proud of. To celebrate yet another milestone, the School of Medical Technology presents this timely webinar with the theme, Medical Technology Recalibrating to Meet the Challenges of the Pandemic Era and Beyond. Current issues besetting the healthcare system and schools shall be discussed by an expert panel of speakers. Sharing the best practices, collaboration, and exchange of the most updated information is the mantra of the educated and dynamic minds. In our effort to adapt to the changing times, we never stopped even for a moment. We ought not to, because education is the only way to circumvent this global health crisis. We are here today absorbing the information, and tomorrow we shall be in the front line. That is why we are recalibrating to prepare you in the best way possible. The School of Medical Technology is committed in making history even in a pandemic and beyond. Again, I warmly welcome you all to an afternoon of enlightenment that you may find the readiness to face the future. Good afternoon, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much for welcoming all of our guests and participants and in setting the virtual stage for its purpose. We are very honored this afternoon for he has granted our request to address the PW community in the event of our founding anniversary and MedTech Week. Let us raise our hands for a warm round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, the PW President, Mr. Marco Alfredo Benitez.
Dr. Felina Young, University Chancellor and SUPAA, Professor Sherwin Toriano, Program Chair of the PW School of Medical Technology. Our very distinguished speakers, Dr. Regina Berba, Dean Ferdinand Mortel, Professor Felicitas Aquino, our dedicated faculty members, students, and guests watching on our social media platforms, good afternoon. On the occasion of the 54th founding anniversary of the School of Medical Technology, I would like to welcome everyone to this webinar entitled Medical Technology Recalibrating to Meet the Challenges of the Pandemic Era and Beyond. Today's webinar is one of the main highlights of MedTech Week, which began with the Creative Scientists Day last Monday and will culminate with a virtual Mind and Music Fest this Friday. I'd like to congratulate the organizers not only for today's timely and relevant webinar, but for the activities that have been lined up for the duration of MedTech Week. A balanced mix of events, bringing out the creative side of our MedTech students and practitioners, enriching their knowledge by providing the latest developments in the battle against COVID-19, and the education industry's effort to bring back face-to-face classes. And then finally, unwinding with music, dancing, and fun competition. We are truly honored and grateful to have our distinguished speakers for today's webinar, each assigned to talk about a very important aspect of the pandemic. Dr. Regina Berba will be delving into the SARS-CoV-2 variants and mutations, a topic extremely relevant as these variants, particularly the Delta, which comprises the majority of COVID infections in the country today, have bearing on the efficacy and effectiveness of vaccines being rolled out and our chances of reaching herd immunity as a country. Relatedly, Professor Felicitas Aquino will talk about the actual blood findings that result from a COVID-19 infection and will hopefully provide more insight into the root of what causes the symptoms felt by someone who's been infected. Last but definitely not the least, Dean Ferdinand Mortel will discuss limited face-to-face classes, internships, and online classes, a topic more closely related to our everyday experience and the challenge many educational institutions are faced with as we try to bring back that component of education that has been missing for already close to 18 months, getting students back on campus. What we must truly deeply appreciate is that despite the unprecedented speed by which safe and effective vaccines have been developed and deployed globally, this virus has somehow managed to still be a step ahead of us as a result of more transmissible variants that have emerged, particularly the Delta. Our public health response, initially focused largely on preventing the spread of droplets in enclosed spaces and high-touch surfaces, has had to shift to now preventing aerosol transmission by ensuring adequate ventilation on top of hand washing, masks, and social distancing. What we must also acknowledge is that for many industries, education included, there's no definitive playbook on how to effectively combat the spread. We have to rely on the guidance of public health agencies, our medical experts, scientific data, and best practices from our fellow institutions, both here and abroad, on how to best prevent the spread in our communities, particularly now that we are preparing to reopen campuses once again for limited face-to-face instruction. In this once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, we truly must bank on shared knowledge and expertise, collaboration across individuals and institutions, and a deeper sense of community, individuals willing to sacrifice for the safety and health of the larger community in order to overcome this dreaded disease. So once again, thank you to our speakers for being here with us to share their knowledge and expertise, and I wish everyone a safe and informative session. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you for that wonderful message, Mr. President. May his message prompt us all to reevaluate where we are and inspire us into positive action towards our educational goals.
As the pandemic continues to surge, people wanted to know more. Our sources of information are varied and may be inadequate. For this reason, it is good that we are given the opportunity to clarify this information, understand, and make the proper assumption for the data that we receive.
At the end of the discussion of each of our resource speakers, we shall be asking them questions from our viewers. If you have any questions, please type it in our YouTube chat corner and we shall be asking our speakers to shed light on these. To introduce the first resource speaker, may I call on Professor Maria Gladys Aquino.
Thank you. Our resource speaker is the Chair of Hospital Infection Control Unit of UP Philippine General Hospital. In the same institution, she also holds key positions like the Chair for the Antimicrobial Stewardship Committee, head of the UP Prime TB Dots, and a member of the COVID Crisis Committee. In the medical city, she is the section head and consultant of the Infectious Disease Section and the director of IREACT TMC HIV/AIDS Clinic. To discuss about the SARS-CoV-2 variants and mutations, please welcome Dr. Regina P. Berba.
Hello, good afternoon po everybody. Okay, may I have my slides please? So first of all, I'd like to greet you all a happy Medical Technology Week and congratulations to the PWU for all your achievements. Thank you, President Benitez, Professor Toriano, esteemed faculty, administrators, and students. Thank you for inviting me here. So next slide, please. So I declare no conflict of interest. These are my associations. Next, please. So the outline of my talk would be the current, a few slides on current COVID situation and more on the variants of concern. And maybe if there's time, I'll discuss with you some of the strategies for reducing our risk. Next, please. So every once in a while, it's good for all of us to look into this particular website, the WHO coronavirus dashboard, and it tells us exactly about how many cases have been reported of COVID-19 in the world. Phenomenal talaga na more almost 227 million cases already have been confirmed, with a lot of significant number of deaths, close to 4,700,000 deaths. No? So it's really something that has affected and devastated many areas in the world. Next, please. So the global situation is such that there's really a large number of confirmed cases and a large number of deaths. Never has it happened before. Next. Next, please. And then when we look at how we are doing in terms of where we are in the regions of the world, you would see that there's like this congruence in the number of cases in different parts of the world. This particular slide now shows the top 12 countries that have been affected, with the United States having the most number of cases. But we're not very far away, no? So 2 million yung number 12 country, that's Italy, and we're just a few millions away. So we really need to work together to get this under control. Next, please. Now, this is the dashboard of the Philippines in the WHO website. You would see that we're actually experiencing our third surge. No? So we had an initial surge around August of 2020, a second surge around March, April of this year, and this third surge due to the Delta variant. Our number of deaths have been more than 36,000 already by this week. Next. So I also want you to just have a clue of how to track. So there's the COVID-19 tracker in the Department of Health website, where it tries to summarize what's happening on a daily basis. You would see here that we've been around 16,000 to 20 plus thousand per day in the last several days. Next, please. And if you scroll down that website of the DOH, you would have an idea immediately what the top regions are. So in this phase of the pandemic, it's the NCR and the region 4A. And in terms of cities and provinces, it's Quezon City and Manila, and provinces in region 4A, Cavite and Laguna. Okay, next. Maybe as medical technologies, it would interest you to know just how many samples have been tested over the last several months and the positivity rate. Okay, so there's a cumulative positive rate here of 13%, but right now that we're in a surge, it ranges from something like 24% to 27%. Okay. Next, please. And as you keep on like scrolling down that website, you'll have an idea. Although I think as a frontliner, the number of usage of the beds in the hospitals may be further improved and be a little bit more accurate, because on the ground, this is not what we're seeing. We're seeing really hospitals, particularly in the NCR and in Region 4A, full to the brim in terms of occupancy rate. And yet the website would tell us that it's only around 70% full. Next. So parang have a grain of salt in the back of your mind always when you're looking at this. This particular page I wanted to show you because in addition to the main graphs that we see, there's this part that could be a heavy resource for you. So all the other database that you might want to see is in this particular part of that website. And if you click, for example, in the situational report, next please. Yan, lalabas something like this. It's the Beat COVID-19. For me, this is the one that's most useful. They summarize everything here. Next, please. And in fact, things that may not be visible immediately for some other graphs, the details are in this particular part of that website. So next, please. It actually, for example, you want to crunch some of the data, for example, of healthcare workers, you would see here that it summarizes the number of healthcare workers and tells us that more around close to 25,000 healthcare workers, and some probably of these healthcare workers may be part of the laboratory workforce. Next. So this DOH website also tells us and summarizes how much vaccines have been deployed. And you would see that it's really been an amazing journey for the DOH, having been able to amass this number of doses of vaccines, 40 million. No? So scrolling down, close to 18 million persons have already received the second dose or fully vaccinated status. Next. And then some more infographics. Next, please. Okay, so what kinds of vaccines have been given so far? Because this is something that's interesting and would probably make or break what happens to us here in the Philippines in terms of COVID-19 control. So most of the vaccines have been mostly Sinovac, and then number 2 is Astra, Pfizer, Moderna. So most of the vaccines that are available in other countries are likewise available here with the predominance of Sinovac. Next. And then, of course, we want to think about how much or how many of our citizens have already been vaccinated. And if we try to measure or estimate how many have received the second dose, telling us that they're already fully vaccinated, based on this, and the second half of second week of September, there's probably something like 15% of the vulnerable population that's been prioritized and has received the vaccines. In a recent Rappler report, many of the government officials have raised the vaccination target. Initially, the herd immunity was set at 70%, but now with everything that's happening, there's been a call for increasing further the target to 90%. So hopefully we would reach that. They said somewhere at the end of this year. Okay, next. So I think the next part is about the COVID variants. Okay, I wanted to show you this because it tells us where we are in our region of the world in terms of vaccination. So we're very far from Singapore, Cambodia, Malaysia. Many people would give comments that Singapore is not difficult to fully vaccinate because they're a small country. But actually, when you go down and try to standardize the number of persons vaccinated per 100 persons, you would see that really Singapore did a really good job because they have estimated 154 vaccinated per 100. So marami beyond their citizenship. They have uh, have more vaccinated persons. No? So we have a long way to go compared to our neighbors. Next, please. Okay. So, trying to review some of the more important findings in publications, recent publications. This came out this year to describe the initial virus. No? So this came from Hunan, China. Next. And it wanted to tell us how it was with the initial original virus. So when this characterization of the virus tells us that the generation time took about close to 6 days before you get symptoms from an exposure. One of the more important findings in this paper was that the infectiousness peak actually happened 1.8 days before the symptom onset. So for example, you wake up one day, let's say today is a Wednesday, and you start having sore throat, a little bit of fever, your infectiousness did not start this morning when you woke up. Your infectiousness peak probably happened 1 to 1.5 days prior. So mga around Monday ng gabi, infectious na kayo. So it's something that's very important in epidemiology and tracking down contacts and transmissibility. Okay. Next, please. So that's why it's very, very important to understand and remember this particular graphics, that the infectiousness is highest just around the time you start getting symptoms. Okay, so it's not when you get the result of the test, or it's not when you decide to go for the testing. It's actually when you start getting the symptoms and go back a few hours earlier. It said 1.8 days, and that's when you map out your contacts. Okay. So next, please. We always remind our staff that this important message is quite crucial in terms of trying to control the transmission and how many get infected. No. So the rest of the information here tells us um, what high risk activities are important also to note, that defines the number of people who will be infected thereafter. So household contacts, people, spouses because they sleep together, other high risk activities like dining, sharing food, and taking part in group activities. And of course, all activities that happen in enclosed settings are much, much higher risk compared to outdoor settings. Next, please. Okay, so I think I'll skip this. Next, please. Next, please. So why do viruses mutate? No. So this SARS-CoV is an RNA virus. Next, please. And it's just normal that these viruses would evolve over time through mutations. So the variants were something that may probably have been expected through time, because that's the natural evolution of these kinds of viruses, of the coronaviruses. Next, please. This is the general picture of the SARS-CoV, and we're familiar with the spike protein and the envelope and the membranes. It's the spike protein that defines the interaction between the host and the virus. Next. The mutations will happen just around the part of the nucleocapsid and the spike protein. Okay. And the mutations have been occurring, and some mutations actually may occur and may not have any bearing on the both viability of the virus and the disease that it causes. but some mutations have been successful in providing some changes. Next, please. So the WHO started to classify variants according to variants of interest, variants of concern, and variants of high consequence. Next. So variants of high consequence are those that have clear evidence that they're going to really cause trouble, kumbaga. No? So there's a really high demand for a lot of countermeasures just so we don't get these variants of high consequence. Okay, next. Most of the variants so far are actually VOCs or variants of concern. That means there's evidence of increased transmissibility or more severe disease or significant reduction in the capability of antibodies to counteract these new variants. Okay. Next. So through time, I told you there was a second surge from the alpha and the beta. We used to know about the alpha as B117. So it came out late last year for many countries and reached our shores around February to March of this year. Okay, next. So meron pa ring alpha that we meet. So there may be some of the variants that we see that have been confirmed by the Philippine Genome Center have been alpha variants until maybe the end of July. Next. It's the mutations that cause increased affinity to the virus that makes them more transmissible. And there's also some countries that have seen that there's increased risk in hospitalization and a little bit of increased risk for mortality. Next. But we were able to overcome this 117 or the alpha variant. Then came very soon the beta variant or the B1.351, which came from South Africa. And it started there in the end of last year also, and then reached our shores around March of this year. Very clearly, next please, it was seen to have increased transmissibility. Pero ang talagang pinaka is the Delta variant. So there's a lot of studies that have, because it's very interesting, it's phenomenal, the amount of disease that it caused led to many studies. Okay, next please. So the one that I think is most important is the one actually from China. So I showed you earlier the initial Hunan virus. And this one, the group of Li et al., their Chinese CDC were able to, next please, actually very clearly, next po, paki-press, identify the very first case of the Delta variant in China, and it was seen in Guangdong, China. And because of their very efficient CDC, they were able to immediately identify all the contacts of this very first case of Delta variant in their country. And because they were able to quarantine, isolate, swab every day, and identify what happens to all the contacts, they were able to shut down the outbreak within weeks, no, within 2 weeks. Okay, next. So what they did was to be able to sequence. So they were able to trace all the cases from the index case. Next. And they described it here. So yung initial Wuhan virus, which we described earlier, is represented here as the green bars, and the orange bars are the current 2021 Delta variant. And you would see that indeed it's more transmissible. No? So from the time of exposure to the time you get sick, there's a shorter interval. So if the previous Hunan or the initial original Chinese virus was around 6 days. For the Delta, it's around 4 days or between 3 to 5 days. Okay. Next. They also showed that the CT value or the cycle threshold was much lower for the Delta variant. And this is the reason why people would say the viral load is like over 1,000 times more for the Delta variant. So people were getting sicker earlier, their viral loads were heavier, that led to more illness. Next. So the rate at which you get sick is even faster. The lines are more steep for the Delta variants. Next. And because of all of this, there were actually changes in the way they were managing their citizens. No? So there were policy changes. Next. Oh, okay. Okay, I think some of the slides were cut because of the interest of time. So siguro yung the other things that were is this the last slide na, no? The other things that they showed in this particular study was that the Chinese government actually, because of the more vigilant stand they took because of the Delta variant, findings of the Delta variant, they actually did a lot of testing. So for the 2 to 3 weeks of monitoring what happened to that first Delta case, they were actually able to really intensify contact tracing and were able to do mass testing of more than 30 million Chinese citizens. So that's how aggressive they have been. Okay, so that ends the lecture. If there are any questions, then I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Regina Verva, for an informative presentation of the COVID variants and mutations. I am sure some queries are now in line regarding the topic, so let us open the floor for question. So question number 1 po. Would vaccination protect us from variants of concern?
So, yeah, yun. Actually, yes. So far, they're called vaccine effectiveness trials. So what the studies currently doing right now are trying to see after tayo mabakunahan, what happens, no? So um, for the Sinovac trials that were reported from Chile and Brazil, the other slides will show that there were effectiveness between 80% to 90% against the risk for hospitalization and death. Yun yung fear natin, di ba? Na maybe the Sinovac vaccine might not be protective enough, but now there is true and sizable, reputable publications that have come out in the last 2 to 3 weeks from Chile and Brazil, confirming that yes, for persons who have received Coronavac is the brand name of Sinovac in Brazil and in Chile. They've seen that it did protect. What about other vaccines? So there was also a report from the UK about Alpha and Delta variants. So in UK, the predominant vaccines they've used was the Pfizer vaccine and the Astra vaccine. And the UK study also showed that there was protection na-protect niya. Nasa mga 80 to 90% plus yung effectiveness to protect persons who were vaccinated against hospitalization and death. Yeah. There was a decline in some individuals who were 80 and above. So pag very elderly and those who were reported to have a lot of comorbidities, yun parang baka mahirapan yung vaccine on its own to protect the individual. That's why it's important for us to also help, kumbaga, help the vaccine protect us, or protect ourselves also by using the usual health precautions.
Thank you, Doc. We also have one query from one of our faculty. So the question is, do you think we should now get booster dose? And would you recommend to use other brand of vaccine? Example, for the first dose, for the first and second dose, it's Sinovac, and a booster of Pfizer.
Mm-mm. So actually, ano yan parang $1,000,000 question yan kasi nobody really knows the answer right now. So the stand of the vaccine expert panel and many other people, including us at the Philippine General Hospital, is that there's not enough evidence to tell us that it's time for booster. So far, it seems like it's protecting us. So pag makita mo yung numbers kasi ng healthcare workers, definitely mas less yung infections now than pre-vaccination. Tapos, among the people we see in the hospital, those who were vaccinated tended to have milder symptoms. So, parang yung premise na pwede ka pa rin magka-COVID is there, but the presentation and the kind of COVID that you get is definitely milder. They may be hospitalized, pero they recover very fast compared to unvaccinated individuals. We've seen a lot of really problems, a lot of difficulties, tapos also a lot of deaths among those who were hospitalized and were never vaccinated. So parang ganun yung current observations that we see here as we see it. So yun yung real world effectiveness na nakikita namin on the ground. And the same is affirmed by the experiences in the US, in the UK, in Israel, yan nga, in Indonesia, Brazil, and Chile. Parang ganun yung nakikita. So hindi pa panahon for booster. What we need is really to vaccinate more people. Kasi kulang pa. Diba? Kita natin kanina na sa mga somewhere between 15 to 20% pa lang tayo ng all persons in the Philippines.
Another question po, what are the other projected mutants that may cause spikes in the future?
Parang hindi natin yan ma-predict. We think there may be more mutations, pero parang exactly what part of the gene that will mutate, I think parang hindi natin yan kaya i-predict. But we hope we won't get a more virulent kind of virus in the future, but we don't also know.
Doc, probably for our last question, what are the factors that hasten the viral mutations in COVID-19?
What factors? So when a population has a lot of persons infected, so mabilis yung multiplication, mas likely magkaroon ng mutation. So that's why it happened, for example, in South Africa at some point, and then in England at one point, diba? Tapos this last one in India, kasi nga at that point in time, very brisk, dami-daming may infection during that part of the pandemic. So, yun, in general, the less infections we have as a country, as a community, as a region, the less likely we'll get mutations. And the more infections we have, let's say people continue to be unvaccinated, the more likely we'll have more problems with mutations.
Thank you, Dr. Berba. Moving forward, may I now call on Mr. Sherwin Toriano, the Program Chair of the PW School of Medical Technology, to present the certificate.
The Philippine Women's University School of Medical Technology presents the Certificate of Appreciation to Dr. Regina P. Berba, our resource speaker, for imparting invaluable knowledge in the webinar Medical Technology, Recalibrating to Meet the Challenges of the Pandemic Era and Beyond, conducted on the 22nd day of September 2021. Again, thank you very much po, Dr. Berba, and congratulations.
Thank you very much po. Thank you very much for having me today. Thank you po.
And now, allow yourselves to be entertained by one of our MedTech talents with a song. Let's warmly welcome Ms. Astrid Toledo with a big round of virtual applause.
I walked across an empty land. I knew the pathway at the back of my head. I felt the earth beneath my feet. Sat by the river and it made me complete. Oh, simple thing, where have you gone? I'm getting tired and I need someone to rely on. I came across a fallen tree. I felt the branches of it looking at me. Is this the place we used to love? Is this the place that I've been dreaming of? Oh, simple thing, where have you gone? I'm getting tired and I need someone to rely on. And if you have a minute, why don't we go? Talk about it somewhere only we know. This could be the end of everything. So why don't we go somewhere only we know? Somewhere only we know. Oh, simple thing, where have you gone? I'm getting old and I need someone to rely on. So tell me when you're gonna let me in. I'm getting tired and I need somewhere to begin.
Thank you for that refreshing performance, Miss Astrud. Truly, PWU students are not only bright but also talented. In relation to the first topic, our second resource speaker shall be presenting the microscopic and blood findings in COVID infection. Let us call on one of our faculty members, Ms. Lara Melissa Olguera, to introduce the next resource speaker.
Thank you. Our next resource speaker is a registered medical technologist assigned at the Section Chief of Hematology and Hemostasis of the Department of Pathology, Lung Center of the Philippines, and training officer of the department. She is a member of the internal audit team and quality management system, as well as the secretary of the ethics committee of the Molecular Diagnostic, Therapeutic, and Clinical Laboratory. She took up BS Medical Technology and MSNP in PWU School of Medical Technology. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Felicitas Aquino.
Good afternoon to everybody. First of all, I would like to thank Philippine Women's University, our president, Dr. Benitez, Professor Sherwin Toriano, Dr. Nini Lim, for inviting me as one of the guest speakers to shed on the microscopic and blood findings in COVID infection. In other words, this would be also a title for role of pathology in COVID-19 diagnosis. Next, please. To start with, I put an outline for the discussion. First, COVID-19 virus, which is the SARS-CoV-2, and then importance of the diagnostic tests, diagnostic procedures and COVID panel, and lastly, prognosis of the disease. Next, please. With regards to coronavirus disease or the COVID-19, which we know it is an infectious disease caused by a coronavirus and not by a bacteria. It may be mild to severe respiratory illness and may recover without special treatment. Those with underlying medical problems and older people are more likely to develop serious illness or those who have comorbidities. Next, please. With this slide, we have here the diagnosis and management, a comprehensive review. It means to say everybody has a part with this for the treatment and management of this coronavirus. First, we have the laboratory, which do the diagnostic tests and procedures, and then with the prevention, which goes with the people around. And then imaging, which has the chest topography, therapy, which are the given the management for the patients, life support, or what are those given to those who are severely infected. Next, please. Importance of the diagnostic tests. Different tests serve different purposes in the management of this pandemic. Viral RNA testing enables point of care. Acute detection of those infected with SARS-CoV on the potential of immunological tests for contact tracing will be increasingly valued. It means to say that early detection or early testing would lead to contact tracing, and then for those who are already infected, they may be given the right management for them. Next, please. Large-scale rapid diagnostic testing of people with symptoms of this COVID-19 is essential for identifying the infection, containing its spread, and preventing deaths or mortality. So the diagnostic testing will continue to play a key role in terms of identifying and preventing infection, even if we have the vaccine. Next, please. What are the diagnostic tests? First, the PCR-based tests are probably the most widely used and are considered the gold standard in terms of sensitivity and specificity. But the sensitivity and specificity of this PCR assay can be more than 95% when administered under ideal condition. But the performance of the test might be lower due to some other factors, such as when or how the sample was collected. Halimbawa, the sample was collected days after the infection. And then, how about the manner it was collected and how it was stored? The technique involves extracting viral RNA from a patient sample, converting it into complementary DNA. Specific sections of the viral genome are amplified in a thermal cycler, and the products are then detected. We also have the gene expert test, antigen testing, and antibody testing. Next, please. To name the main routine tests, requested for COVID-19 are complete blood count or the CBC. It is used to monitor the differential count for the numerical and morphological conditions of the cells and how the cells look like in the peripheral blood. Assays investigating coagulation and fibrinolysis cascades, like for example, PT or the prothrombin time, activated partial thromboplastin time, D-dimers, and fibrinogen. Inflammation-related parameters such as ESR, or the erythrocyte sedimentation rate, CRP, C-reactive protein, ferritin, and procalcitonin. Also included is interleukin-6 determination. Due to the potential ability of the virus to severely impair several vital organs, such as the heart, liver, and kidneys, there should be an analysis for biochemical parameters such as SGOT, SGPT, LDH, CK or the creatine kinase, bilirubin, creatinine, albumin, alkaline phosphatase, BUN, and potassium. Also included is chest radiography. Next, please. Now we go to the complete blood count diagnostic value. Lymphopenia is a prominent finding in most patients. Some studies have reported an increased number of neutrophils and at times monocytes. The total leukocyte count or the total WBC count varies among patients, which may reflect the dominance of either lymphopenia or neutrophilia. Decreased lymphocytes accompanied by mild thrombocytopenia are among the most common abnormal findings attracting attention in CBC of COVID-19 patients. Next, please. Aside from them, monocytes and macrophages are the most important cells of the innate arm of the immune system, which plays a substantial part in the body's defense against viral infection. They respond to the microbial antigens by producing inflammatory mediators to remove pathogens and repair tissue injury. But during cytokine storm, they can be so harmful to the host in the acute respiratory distress syndrome cases caused by SARS-CoV-2. Interleukin-6 and other cytokines are increased, and so with monocytes and macrophages in pulmonary inflammation, lung damage, and multi-organ failure. Next, please. Now we go to coagulation and fibrinolysis diagnostic procedure. This is under hematology also, aside from the CBC and other blood findings. Coagulation and fibrinolysis diagnostic procedure. In COVID-19 patients, they have increased prothrombin time together with prolonged activated thromboplastin time and elevated D-dimer. Hemostasis testing has an important role in diagnosing COVID-19 patients. In the high rate of venous thromboembolism in COVID-19 patients, it goes along with the derangement of coagulation laboratory parameters. So what are those laboratory parameters? They are the PT, APTT, D-dimer, fibrinogen, and also platelet. The diagnostic approach also includes prothrombin time and platelet count. Fibrinogen might give an indication for worsening coagulopathy, fibrinolysis parameters, coagulation factors, natural anticoagulants, antiphospholipid antibodies, and thrombin generation assays had been deranged. So now we go to the microscopic evaluation. the following slides that I will give you are some of the findings seen in COVID patients which are severely infected. In here, you can see different forms of monocytes, and look at the red blood cells. They have different sizes, and also there is anemia. Next, please. Also here, you can notice there is mild thrombocytopenia, and mind you, neutrophils are elevated. Next, please. Also, the monocytes are predominant in this picture, and look at the size of the platelets. They are enlarged, or in other words, they are giant platelets. Next, please. Another picture of monocytes which are predominant in these findings, which is severely infected by COVID-19. Also here, plenty of monocytes and seen neutrophils, and almost platelets are not visible. Next, please. Monocytes also, and also giant platelets. Same here, plenty of monocytes with neutrophils, and few of the platelets are seen. Also, this picture connotes that there is elevation or increase in the number of monocytes. Okay, now we go to monocytes. A monocyte takes part in the inflammatory process, but also differentiate into macrophages and also dendritic cells to recruit other immune cells and target other signaling pathways. In this picture, you can see different forms of monocytes. They are activated. It means to say the RDW, or the size of monocytes, are bigger. They grow, they increase, volumetric. And then you can also see letter B is a macrophage with vacuolation, and also a variation of size of and shape of monocytes are seen. Normally, the shape of monocyte is a convoluted brain, but in this case, with the COVID patient, they differ in the morphology of the cells. Next, please. Lymphocytes. It is a type of WBC responsible required for the immunological disease were significantly softer in COVID patients, which indicate a strong immune reaction. Increased numbers of large granular lymphocytes and lymphoplasmacytoid. They are like plasma cells because of their basophilic cytoplasm and atypical or reactive lymphocytes with abundant blue cytoplasm. This can also be seen, but mind you, there is lymphopenia in COVID-19 cases. Next, please. Changes in the morphology of the neutrophils. In COVID-19 cases, neutrophils became larger and more voluminous. The neutrophils, which there is a deformation of the nucleus, which we call the Pelger-Huey anomaly. Letter C, letter D, and also E, F, different forms of neutrophils, which are increasing in segments, and letter G, H, and I, also different forms of neutrophils with hyposegmentation, and it means to say that they don't have filaments to segment. Next, please. Red blood cells. In the red blood cells, it is it is very important that you see the formation or the morphology of the red blood cells. In this picture, you can see polychromatic red cells, different size and of red blood cells, and there is anemia with coarse basophilic stippling and nucleated RBC. It means to say, with the large number of the red blood cells, it is very hard that they cannot pass through the arteries of vein. So there is vascular occlusion. So most of the time, the COVID patients need oxygen to augment for their breathing. Next, please. Platelets. The virus are able to infect the bone marrow cells and recruiting the abnormal hematopoiesis. In this case, the platelets are there is increased platelet consumption, inhibition of platelet synthesis, and there is increased platelet destruction. In this picture, you can see clumping of platelets. It is the most significant findings. That's why in other cases, there are mild thrombocytopenia, and then which will undergo or it will be reflected in the coagulopathy of the patient. Next, please. In this picture, morphological anomalies of blood cells in COVID-19. So, number one, letter A, Pelger way. Letter B, hyposegmentation. Letter C, you have your myelocyte. Letter D, you have your hypogranulated neutrophil. Letter E, you have your promyelocyte, and also with letter F. Letter G, you have your lymphocyte. Letter H and letter I, these are lymphocytes that has a granular formation. Letter J, K, and L. Letter J and K, they are cells that would go to apoptosis, and letter L, presence of giant lymphocytes. Okay, now let's go to the next. This is the sample of a CBC result. You can see in here, there is lymphocytosis, there is leukocytosis, and then monocytosis with the presence of polychromatic red cells. And look at the thrombocyte. It is within normal value, which means to say in a day or two, or as the disease prolong, it will go down to a mild thrombocytopenia or thrombocytopenia. Next, please. Another one, this one is, this is the result from a 5-part differential count. Same with what you are doing with your microscopic examination of the differential counting. Next, please. Now we go to the inflammation-related parameters in diagnostic value. Inflammation-related parameters are highly elevated in acute phases, COVID-19. ESR, or the erythrocyte sedimentation rate, CRP, and procalcitonin are increased in the sera of these patients. Ferritin levels and CRP are significantly higher because of the activation of macrophages, especially during the acute inflammation stage, suggesting that ferritin measurement may provide diagnostic value and can be used for diagnostic purpose in COVID-19. Screening ferritin in hemodialysis patients revealed that COVID-19 patient had a marked increase. So these inflammation-related parameters are very important in the diagnosis of COVID-19 infection. Next, please. Biochemical parameters, diagnostic values. The parameters reported increased levels of lactate dehydrogenase, alanine aminotransferase or the ALT, aspartase aminotransferase or the AST, and total bilirubin also increased and decreased in the levels of albumin, elevated creatine kinase, and increased creatinine. BUN, potassium, alkaline phosphatase, triglycerides are also increased, but there is a low level of thyroid stimulating hormone. Next, please. I would like to show you these findings, laboratory findings with the diagnostic and prognostic values. In here, it is with the test requested, the CBC, coagulation panel, the inflammatory panel, and the biochemical with the diagnostic and prognostic. You can see that the different tests are increased, noting that there is a possibility or it is clearly designated or clearly seen in COVID-19 patients. And the prognostic, with the use of the diagnostic, the prognostic is very evident that with the early detection and early diagnostic procedures done, early detection and management could be applied to the patient who are suffering from COVID-19. Next, please. In conclusion, in vitro diagnostic efficiently contribute to the early identification of SARS-CoV infection. There is evidence that laboratory medicine may also provide essential assistance to discriminate between severe and non-severe COVID-19 in the variation of the disease, whether asymptomatic to fatal, necessitates the identification and application of novel laboratory biomarkers to rapidly and economically predict COVID-19 prognosis as presented. Next, please. Okay, to end this, I would like to share you a verse. Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid, from Deuteronomy 31 verse 6. Next, please. Thank you for listening. And next, please. Stay safe, everyone, all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Aquino, for giving us a comprehensive picture of the laboratory findings in COVID infection. Again, if you have questions, please type it in our YouTube chat corner and we shall be reading a few of them. So, question number 1. What is the significance of cytokines in COVID infection? Can it be considered a prime diagnostic test for COVID?
Well, cytokine is a protein, and when it is elevated, it goes with the elevation also of the monocytes and macrophages. If there is a cytokine storm, the values of the inflammatory parameters are also increased, which may lead to multi-organ failures. Okay.
So, Professor Aquino, we have another question here. How does the CBC picture in COVID infection differ from other viral infections?
Okay. To differentiate viral from other viral infection, I would like to differentiate it with dengue fever. Dengue. Okay. In dengue fever, lymphocytes are predominant. Also, with the presence of reactive lymphocytes in the blood, peripheral blood. Platelets are very low. There is marked thrombocytopenia. And then there is no leukocytosis. There is no neutrophils. More on neutrophils is not present. While in COVID-19, neutrophils are predominant. There is leukocytosis and also monocytosis, and the platelets are mild, maybe within normal limits, or as the disease progresses, it may lead to thrombocytopenia. Okay.
Another question would be, aside from the usual CBC and coagulation tests, what other tests can be most useful and how do these differentiate COVID infection?
As I have presented, the inflammatory test, which includes ESR, CRP, procalcitonin, and ferritin, are also done to, and they are very useful biomarkers to diagnose COVID infection, and also the biochemical tests, which are the enzymes, the SGOT, SGPT, LDH, alkaline phos, albumin, BUN, creatinine, almost all for the chemistry tests. They're also used to differentiate COVID-19 from other diseases. And they are very useful biomarkers. Biomarkers na lahat sila. They are being used. Okay.
I think we have another question from Sir Toriano. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Hello, ma'am, Professor
Hi.
Aquino.
Hello.
So I am very interested in the morphology of our cells now. So you have been mentioning about clumped platelets, even a Pelger-Eway phenomenon,
Yes.
and signs of apoptosis as well. So these are all myelodysplastic changes.
Yes.
So my question is, how often do we find myelodysplastic changes in our peripheral blood smears in COVID patients? Also, how do we distinguish this with chronic leukemic cases, which are more of them are myelodysplastic as well?
Okay. With the presence of these morphological changes in the neutrophils, in cases of COVID-19, these are seen in cases, severe cases. For example, if the patient is diagnosed or in its early stage, hindi pa masyado nakikita yan. But a number or few are present. But in severe cases, they are all present in the peripheral blood of these patients. While is it CML? Hello?
Myelodysplastic changes.
Yes, in CML.
forms of, yes.
In CML.
In CML, not so, but in other MDS-related forms of leukemia.
Okay. For example, in CML, there are the stages of maturation are present in the blood, including from the youngest up to the oldest. Stages of maturation. Youngest, it means there is blast and there are neutrophils. Stages signaling that they are present in the peripheral blood and even in the bone marrow. While in other MDS, hindi sila present. There is a predominant cell present when in cases where we have this MDS or the myelodysplastic syndrome. Like for example, if the patient is of age na, maybe predominant cells are lymphocytes. And then these lymphocytes, pag tumagal na yung MDS niya, it might lead to leukemia. That's why. And also, platelets are affected. But mostly, lymphocytes are present.
Thank you very much, Professor Aquino.
Welcome.
We have maybe the last question, ma'am. We have another Ma'am Aquino to ask a question to you. Yes, yes, Ma'am Gladys. You may proceed po.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Good afternoon. You mentioned that the picture in the peripheral blood smear of patient with COVID typically have higher neutrophils. Am I correct with that, ma'am?
Yes.
Yes, as compared with the other viral infection.
Yes.
My question is, would you suppose or you think that there is a superimposition of bacterial infection in most COVID infection? Because some of them are actually treated with azithromycin. So do you think there is also, or most of them would have actually bacterial infection?
Yes. Accompanying to that viral infection, may bacterial infection din yan. That's why they are treating or they are giving azithromycin that is for the lungs. Kasi the vital organ affected here is the lungs. So they are looking into if there is bacterial infection. That's why, and also if there are inflammation. That's why procalcitonin and other inflammatory tests are requested. And bacterial infection is also associated with this disease.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, Professor Aquino. Truly, we have learned a lot from our speakers. And as medical technologists, we now know what to expect in our samples when testing in the laboratory. Once more, may I now call on Sir Toriano to present the Certificate of Appreciation.
The Philippine Women's University School of Medical Technology presents the Certificate of Appreciation to Professor Felicitas C. Aquino, resource speaker, for imparting invaluable knowledge in the webinar Medical Technology, Recalibrating to Meet the Challenges of the Pandemic Era and Beyond, conducted on the 22nd day of September 2021. Again, Professor Aquino, congratulations and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all of you, School of Medical Technology. Thank you.
Our last resource speaker shall talk about the educational system and the instructions in online classes, internship, and the limited face-to-face concept for the allied health programs. To introduce our resource speaker, may I call on Ms. Grisel de la Cruz.
Our last speaker took up Bachelor of Science in Medical Technology at the Manila Central University and subsequently the degree of Master of Arts in College Teaching, major in Medical Technology. In 2009, he finished his he became the Dean of the College of Medical Technology in 2013 and holds that position up to the present. To share his expertise about the limited face-to-face classes, internship, and flexible learning, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dean Ferdinand Mortel.
Hello, good afternoon. Here po ba? Kasi I'm having Wi-Fi connection here, technical problem. But anyways, I'll just, I hope that I'm clear.
Yes, sir. We can hear you quite well. May I request everyone in the webinar room to please turn off their microphone so that we will not be having any feedback before Dean Mortel begins with his discussion. Can you turn off all microphones, please? Thank you very much.
Okay, so yeah. Before I begin, I would like to say thank you to the president, to Dr. Nini Lim, to Professor Sherwin Toriano, the administrators, the students for inviting me to be one of your speakers in your Medical Technology Week celebration. So this afternoon, I am tasked to discuss on limited face-to-face internship. Well, classes may also be included, and online classes. But as I go on, I will be tackling also on flexible learning because the flexible learning encompasses also the online learning. Okay, so before I dive into my the meat of my discussion, I would like to first track back the history on how did we really came up to this method of delivery instruction that we are implementing at the moment. Next slide, please. Looking back at the history in March of 2020, this is a time when there is really a surge in the increasing cases of the COVID-19. And in March 11 of 2020, by the virtue of CHED COVID-19 advisories numbers 2 and 3, CHED suspended the classes in the National Capital Region and later on in the whole part of Luzon, and that includes the internship and practicum courses. And CHED ordered the HEIs to coordinate with their host training establishment for the adjustment of training hours and to consider an alternative training modalities. In our case, our affiliate for internship is what we call the training affiliate laboratories. No? I remember that time because this is March, we are having problems on how our interns will be completing their duties because of the suspension of classes. But there's always a hope, no? We are hopeful that the classes will resume after a week or two of suspension, no? But worst case scenario had happened, no? Wherein instead of resumption of classes, the suspension had been extended. So medyo tumagal, no, yung suspension ng classes, and there were dilemmas not only in the completion of the internship of the students, but also completion of those that are school-based, no, completion of the requirements of the school-based students. How are they going to complete their grades? No? Nagkaroon tayo ng problema sa completion ng mga grades na yun. Until there is another advisory, no? Can you please proceed to the next slide? Okay, there were another advisories because the suspension of classes has been extended, no? There were advisories number 6 and 7 that was issued by CHED at that time. Look at the transition, no? From March, umabot na tayo ng May that the suspension is still up, no? Hindi pa rin na-relief yung suspension na yan. And these advisories number 6 and 7, this time allows the HEIs to continue to exercise their judgment in the deployment of available flexible learning and other modalities as well. No? Dito na pumasok yung tinatawag natin na flexible learning. No? It is this period, no, wherein the different academic organizations are becoming now proactive in preparing for the next school year. No? Kasi parang tayo at that time, we are at a loss. We do not know on how are we going to implement this flexible learning because we are used to the traditional way of teaching. Nandun tayo sa traditional na talaga na face-to-face. Although we knew that there were several institutions in the past, long before this flexible learning has been implemented, no, that are also conducting distance learning, no, but not as, should I say, not as much as full implementation that we are doing today. Actually, more on online classes ang ginagawa and distance learning. No? So from this period, no, na until May, this is a time that you will also notice that most of the HEIs have shifted their calendar, school calendar. No? Instead of opening on the regular June, most of the HEIs had moved their opening of classes into late of August or in the months of August and on the early week of September. Dahil yun nga no, yung time na hindi lahat ng school are prepared on how are we going to implement this. Until finally in September of 2020, next slide please, the CHED had issued a guidelines on the implementation of flexible learning. Kasi noong time na nag-suspend ng class and that's the time that we have to rush preparing. No? PASMET is quite very active in the preparation of the guidelines, no? And these guidelines were cascaded to the different member schools, no? Talagang there's a consistent meeting with the deans, no? With the different schools, no? Para talagang mairaos natin eh. Because the mandate of the CHED is not really to stop, no, yung continuity ng ating education. The more that we have to continue, because right now, no, we really need a lot of healthcare workers that is really a prime mover in the testing, in the monitoring and control of this COVID-19. The more that we have to produce much graduates. And I remember that there were also parang chaos in a sense that there were health workers also that are afraid, no, to get infected with the COVID. Marami ring nagre-resign na hindi na nagtatrabaho sa hospital, no? And again, kung wala tayong mapuproduce na graduate, this would be causing a bigger problem, no? Kung wala tayong mapuproduce na mga bagong professional healthcare workers. That's why, yeah, these guidelines on the implementation of flexible learning has been cascaded to the different institutions by the virtue of CMO4 series of 2020. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, now, let me go on to the flexible learning first. No? Ano ba yung tinatawag natin na flexible learning? By the definition of CHED, the flexible learning is the design and delivery of program, courses, and learning interventions that address the learner's unique needs in terms of place, process, and products of learning. So, flexible learning is more encompassing than just online learning, no? Para kasing ang counterpart ng flexible learning, of course, in the basic education, they call it as the blended learning, no? As what they implement, no? They have the blended learning, which is also somewhat similar also with the flexible learning, or what we call sometimes tinatawag din natin na distance learning. Actually, magkakapatid yung mga terms na yan, no? But flexible learning is not just merely online learning, no? Kasi yun nga, no, kinukonsider natin yung place, yung process, and the products of learning. That's why CHED had enumerated, no? Parang merong mga different components or methodology, no? That is included in what we call flexible learning. Sabi dyan, this flexible learning uses digital and non-digital technology. That's why in other place, they might use a module type of delivery, no? Maaring hindi computerized, no? Maaring they are not using the mobile, no? The mobile phone for their learning, but they are using more on module. But it could be, no, a part also. It could be considered also a flexible learning, no? Covers both residential, meaning face-to-face, in-person residential learning, and non-residential, out-of-classroom learning, no? Kasi nga, there are places also in the country wherein there is really no, or a lower rate of, if not lower, there's no case of COVID-19, no? So in that case, pwede naman tayong magkaroon pa rin ng face-to-face but on a limited basis, no? Ang example, for instance, sa atin dito, no? Pwede kasing, like sa basic education, they are just allowing their parents to go, no? Doon sa kanilang mga eskwelahan, just to get the module, and then the students, no, or the pupils will be answering those modules, and they will return that back, no, to their institution. It can be considered also, no, kaya tinatawag sa basic education na blended learning yon. But it could also be, no, a part or a method of what we call flexible learning. And of course, the online learning, as we know, no, sinasabi natin ngayon, yeah, let's implement yung flexible learning, pero more often, no, talagang ang ginagawa natin, the mode of delivery that we are using most of the time is online, no? Talagang online tayo. Kasi wala talaga tayong ibang other, in some areas, no, probably dito sa Metro Manila, sa NCR, wala tayong ibang mode of modality, no, that how can we really deliver, no, the teaching, but of course using online, no, using talaga yung ating internet connections. So flexible learning talaga is like, it's not like just online, no? It's not just like module. It's not just like limited face-to-face, but it's a combination, no? But yun nga, no, since we are dealing most of the time with the online learning, let us consider ano ba yung tinatawag natin na online learning. Next slide po. But anyways, now let me just mention first the challenges of this flexible learning identified by the Commission on Higher Education. No? First, sinasabi nila, because these are also the challenges that we might encounter in conducting the online classes or the online learning. No? So one, they have mentioned about connectivity concerns of faculty and the students. No, dati talaga no, nung nagsisimula tayo sa implementation nitong flexible learning or online learning, we have surveyed our students, no, and yeah, we have received a lot of issues, no, with regard to their connectivity, and also the faculty members, no. We have received a lot of issues. As I remember, there are also HEIs, no, just to resolve this problem, they provide a Wi-Fi connection, no, to their students and to their faculty. Okay, another one is the high cost of internet service, which is also a given factor. No? Alam naman natin that if you will be subscribing for a higher speed or higher connection, that would also imply a higher monthly dues, no, for their connection. So a lack of preparedness of faculty and students to immediately transition from the traditional face-to-face to online and blended learning. This has been an issue talaga, no? Sabi ko nga, even though we are already in our 2 years of the implementation of this online learning or flexible learning, I know that there are still a lot of issues that we have to settle, and there's a lot of things that we still have to learn. I remember, sinasabi ko, nung time na we are doing the traditional delivery, no? Before we can really master a certain program, it takes time, no? Before we can master it. And I believe that right now, that even we are implementing this online or flexible learning, no, for around 2 years now, I also felt that we still have to learn a lot from this. Marami pa tayong magiging issues na dapat nating isettle. Like I heard in the news last time, no, na nagiging rampant yung mga cheating sa mga online classes, no? But those are given fact, no, that we still have to learn a lot from it. And yeah, lack of appropriate gadgets for online or digital learning. This has been a problem also, no? I remember there are also issues on certain apps that the students or the faculty are using, no? And these apps may work only on computer or in PCs or laptop, and sometimes this app may not be working on a mobile. Problem uli yan, no? If the students are only using the mobile phones, they cannot access to that particular app. So nagiging problema. And disadvantaged students and HEI personnel or the displaced students and faculty of COVID-19 patients. Well, there are some people, especially yung mga cannot really afford, no, cannot really afford to buy gadgets, no, for them to use for the online learning. Well, that's another challenge. That's another problem. And if there are students or faculty, no, na nagkakasakit, they have been infected for COVID-19, no, and they have been isolated or quarantined, sometimes yung facilities, no, meron din difficulty in terms of connections. So ito yung mga challenges that has been identified that I believe may also be applicable, no, when we talk about the online learning. Okay, but let's go on what is this online learning is all about. Next slide, please. So online learning is education that takes place over the internet. It is often referred to as the e-learning, among other terms. However, online learning is just one type of distance learning, the umbrella term for any learning that takes place across distance and not in a traditional classroom. Distance learning has a long history and there are several types available today. So this is what I'm telling, no? Kanina, sinasabi natin na yung flexible learning, tinatawag natin sa basic education na blended learning or distance learning, no? But in our situation now, no, most of the, should I say, methodology of delivery that we are implementing is really online learning. Talagang online learning talaga. No? Aminin natin na ngayon talaga, we conduct classes really online using the internet. But however, no, sabi nga, it has been in existence long before. No? Nag-iiba-iba lang yung kanyang itsura. No? Nag-iiba-iba lang yung modes, no, ng delivery or yung materials, yung medium na ginagamit natin. No? But however, this is just the same. Like before, no, pag sinabi natin distance learning, sinasabi natin meron tayong tinatawag na correspondence. I remember at times mga 90s, no, meron akong training before, no, that we just answer, no, parang module siya. We answer the modules, no, or yung mga flyers nila, yung mga leaflets nila na binibigay sa iyo, and then you just mail it back to them, no? Correspondence, nagsusulatan lang kayo, no? And it is also a form of distance learning, no? So, correspondence, no? Meron tayong telecourses. Now, in basic education, they are also using telecourses because they also use the radio and the television medium now, no? To educate the pupils or the students. And then we also have the CD-ROM course, no? Wherein this is also like e-learning because all the materials, no, all the lectures are actually included in the CD-ROM. You just play it, you watch it, and you learn from it. No? We call it as the CD-ROM course. Online learning, this is the type of learning or the type of classes that we are actually implementing now. No? We have the synchronous and the asynchronous activity. So, yan yung most na ginagawa natin, no? Asynchronous and asynchronous, no? Which is, ang tawag nga natin now is the online learning. And then we have the mobile learning. It's like online learning also, no? But you just simply use your phones, no? To listen and to study, no? So you can use your personal digital assistants, your digital audio player, your iPads, your MP3 players, no? We just call it the mobile. So all of these are said to be online learning, but there are just different mediums, no? May mga iba't ibang mediums lang tayo na ginagamit para ma-implement ito. Next slide. Okay, so how it works, no? Paano nga ba nating ini-implement yung tinatawag nating online learning nowadays? Now, at the time we're in, there is a transition, no, from traditional face-to-face to flexible learning or to online learning. No, there were an emergent increase in the use of the CMS, no, yung tinatawag natin na mga course management system, which we also called it as the LMS, no, yung learning management system, and sometimes you also called it as the VLE or yung virtual learning environment. No, but all of these are just simply a medium that may be used nowadays in order to deliver online learning. So, yeah, next slide. Now, there are many platforms that we can use online to deliver our instructions, no? So, we can use the Moodle. Ito yung, actually, Moodle has been in existence for so long, no? Kahit pa bago nagkaroon ng pandemya, may mga gumagamit na ng Moodle platform, no, as their VLE or their learning management system. Coursera, the Google Classroom, no, the Microsoft Teams, Blackboard, Canvas, and so many. No, these learning platforms can be accessed by free, but you can also subscribe so you can maximize the features of these platforms. And I'm sure alam na rin ng mga estudyante, no, yung mga different platforms na to. Like in our case, we are using the Moodle, no? But this is a paid version of the Moodle so that we can maximize the use. If we have exams to be given by the student, quizzes, activities to be answered by the student, we all put that in Moodle. Doon namin ginagawa sa Moodle. The e-books, no, the reading materials, the links that they have to access, all are inputted to the Moodle. We also use the Microsoft Teams. So, but the Microsoft Teams is more on the employee. We were given access to the Microsoft Teams for meetings, for email, no? Yung mga email na naman dyan namin ginagamit, no? And then, of course, the Zoom. We have the Zoom also. No? We use the Zoom as another platform. This is for synchronous classes. But of course, it depends on the choice of the institution on what particular platform they are going to utilize in order to conduct the flexible, or should we say, the online learning. So marami, no? Maraming platforms that we can use. Again, sabi ko nga, we can access this for free, or we can also subscribe so that we can maximize the use of these platforms. And most of the HEIs now are really using these platforms to deliver online learning. This is how it works now, no? Ganun na siya ngayon talaga nangyayari. Next slide. Okay, but there were many disadvantages, and of course there are advantages. No? May mga pros and cons yung tinatawag nating flexible or online learning, no? But however, no, there are also, of course, let's just look, no, on the brighter side of the situation that we are experiencing right now. And I believe that, sabi nila, there is now a paradigm shift, no, in the teaching and learning because of the shift of our traditional classroom delivery into a online. No? May magandang dulot din naman. No? So sabi doon, online learning is catalyzing a pedagogical shift in how we teach and learn. There is a shift away from top-down lecturing and passive students to a more interactive, collaborative approach in which students and instructor co-create the learning process. And the instructors or the faculty role is changing from what we call sage on the stage to guide on the side. I don't know, the faculty would agree, no? I hope the students also, no? Because this time before the paradigm is more on faculty or teacher-centered. Normally, the faculty would manipulate the stage. Sila lang yung lagi nagdi-discuss, sila yung natututo, sila yung nag-aaral. But because of the shift, no, into online learning, the teacher now, this is a time that we can really maximize, no, the function of the teacher as facilitator. Kasi even before, di ba, when we shifted from the competency-based to outcomes-based, no? Lagi na nating sinasabi yan, no? Dapat it should really, the function, no, of the faculty should really be like only a facilitator. And the paradigm should that the teacher should only facilitate, no? And the learning should be more on student-centered. Kaya lang aminin natin, no? Marami pa rin, kahit na sinabi natin, yes, we have shifted to outcomes-based, no? Marami pa rin mga teachers, no? Na talagang ang nangyayari, they own the room, no? When they discuss. Okay? Nandun pa rin yung sage on the stage at tinatawag natin, no? In spite of the shift into outcomes-based, that we would really want the learning to become more student-centered. Gusto na natin na estudyante na talaga gumawa, no? The faculty should only facilitate, no? Kaya lang ang nangyayari, ganun pa rin. Ganun pa rin, no? The faculty would dominate, no? Parang nagkakaroon ng less interaction. But now that we are online, I think this is the time that we really have to do that function as a teacher, no? We really act only as facilitator. We have no choice, no? Hindi na natin nakikita ang mga estudyante natin personally, no? Talagang you give them instruction and you monitor them and you let them do the task and give feedback. That's the challenge of online learning, but that's also the advantage of online learning because we make our students now more independent. But there are still, of course, cons, no? Marami pa rin mga cons yan, no? But this is what is happening right now, no? That the faculty should really act as facilitator to their students. And this shift of teaching and learning actually results into constructivism, constructionism, and collaboration. Next slide, please. Okay, constructivism is more on the side of the faculty. No? Parte ito ng mga teacher. Sabi dyan, no? This is a student-centered approach in which students co-create their learning experience. The approach empowers the students as an active learner instead of passive recipients. So the faculty or the teacher now are become constructivists. No? They give instruction, they provide instruction to the students. The student would do what has been instructed, and the faculty would monitor and would guide, no, our students. Because of that shift, no, shift in teaching methodology, nag-shift din tayo ng teaching and learning. No? And constructionism is more on the part of the students. When they are given instruction, they have to do it independently. Wala naman tayong ibang choice. No? Talagang pag sinabi ni ma'am o ni sir, basahin ninyo ito. No? O igawa ninyo ito, itong procedure na to, how are you going to discuss it step by step? No? You construct on your own. Hindi kagaya noon, binibigay na lahat ni teacher. No? O ito na, nakakonstruct na siya, ready na, gagawin na lang natin. In our case, no, ang naging nangyari sa amin, before, during the time na nagkaroon ng face-to-face, talagang bumibili ng manual yung mga bata. No? Talagang they purchase, no, yung mga manuals, no, susundan na lang nila yun. But now, no, that we are implementing laboratory, online, napakahirap i-perform ng online laboratory. No? Wala silang manual. They have to construct based on the instruction of the faculty. Kaya pag mga asynchronous time na nila, paano based doon sa tinuro ni ma'am, paano nyo gagawin ang urinalysis? No? So students are becoming now constructionist. Ang faculty are constructivist. No? Nag-guide na lang, nagpa-facilitate, but the student would create their own experience. No? Challenge ang blood collection, challenge ang what you call this, challenge ang inoculation sa microbiology, no? Although we have virtual labs, no? But still challenge pa rin lahat 'yon, no? And of course there's collaboration now because the efforts are both for the faculty and for the students, no? So these are the two shift of the three items, no, included in the shift of the paradigms: constructivism, constructionism, and collaboration. In order for the student to learn, para matuto sila, no, and to pass the course, they have to collaborate with their faculty. No? Even in research, ganyan din, they have to collaborate. Kaya kahit nasabihin natin na sa pandemya, students still came out, no, with a very, very interesting and good research output because of the paradigm shift. Okay, next slide. Okay, these are just, I know, many benefits, no, that we can get from online learning. The convenience, nandiyan yan, no, nandiyan yung the benefits of online learning is that you don't have to travel, you don't have to spend your money, no, you don't have to spend for the gas. You don't have to spend a long time in shower. Madami, no? Convenience, no? Nandito na. That's one advantage, no? Kagaya ngayon, magtotalk tayo. Before, no, you have to prepare a lot. Babiyahe ka, no? May mga allowance for traveling. Pero ngayon wala na because we can just do it in the convenience of our own space. Okay, enhanced learning because of the paradigm shift, leveling of the playing field, no? Meaning this time it is nawawala na ang favoritism, no? Because everybody now is on equal footing. Di ba? Parang kung mahihiyain ang estudyante in the past sa ating actual, baka ngayon sila yung nag-excel sa pagsasagot online, no? Hindi na sila mahihiyang sumagot when you call them because hindi na personal, no, yung ating teaching. Hindi na tayo nakikita. Kaya everyone is in equal footing ngayon, no? Leveling of the playing field. Okay, there's more interaction because we want to see if the students are really listening. So you call them. Nagro-roll call pa rin tayo kahit na sabihin nating nasa online pa lang tayo. The more that we do that, because we would want to verify if our students are still awake and still listening and still there, no? Lalo na pag halimbawang mahina sir ang aming internet, pwede bang naka-off cam lang ako, no? Well, yun yung mga pwede nating maging problems na pinagbibigyan natin because of internet connection. But more interaction. The faculty should more, no, na magtatawag dapat ng mga estudyante so that we will know if they are really listening, no? Global connection is easier, no? Kumbaga nasa Pilipinas ka, may gustong estudyante na naipit ng quarantine sa ibang bansa. Well, they can also enroll and they can be part of your class, no? Teachers are becoming more innovative now, no? Kasi nga yung challenge, kailangan mas innovative para mas matuto yung mga estudyante natin. Improve administration, no? This time, a lot of things has been improved, no? The HRIS ng mga eskwelahan, no, has been improved. Wala na tayong mga monitoring, of course, that we are doing in the past. Merong mga checkers. Now, how are we going to be checked? We have the human resource IT system now, no? Kailangan may mga ganun na where we put our task, no, our daily time record, no? So nagiging mas improved, no, yung administration, the filing of leaves, no, mas nagiging online na lahat siya. Maximize the physical resources because the space is not being used right now in the school. They can opt to use that for another function or another purpose, no? Kung hindi na nagagamit yung mga space na yon, less congestion, pwedeng magamit nila sa iba pang, pwedeng gawing parking space, no, ng outsiders. So maximizing. Outreach, easier to enroll now, no? Easier to reach students because of the online enrollment. And savings, because wala na nga tayong masyadong gastos sa kuryente. And like before, the school has to spend so much for the electricity, for the water, no? For the maintenance, no? And even on the part of the faculty and the students. Wala na kayong pamasahe, walang baon, sa bahay na lang lahat, no? These are the benefits. Next. But however, there are also disadvantages, no? Because the online classes is less experiential. Kagaya niya, no? Hindi ka makapag-perform talaga that we do in the laboratory in the past. Easier to procrastinate. Kasi kung may time na kung kailan mo sasagutan, ay mamaya na lang, last minute ko na lang gagawin yan. No? Medyo sometimes we are becoming more reluctant, no? Kaya yung sinasabing freedom more than you can handle. Minsan sa sobrang freedom, no, baka bumigay na din yung ating mga estudyante at yung ating mga faculty. You just have to balance everything, no? Kasi yun ang isang problem. And social or the physical isolation because we don't really see our classmates anymore, our teachers anymore, no? But personally, no? But we can still connect through social platforms, pero mas sinasabi nga natin na mas advantage pa rin talaga yung physical. Next slide. Okay, although flexible learning deemed to be the most appropriate and safest pedagogical approach during the pandemic, there might be some instances that face-to-face classes are possible based on COVID-19 situations of localities. Kasi let's admit, no, even though, we are settled on the online learning, but still, no, we still look for the actual or the face-to-face classes. No? Actually, in reality, we surveyed our students, no, marami pa rin talaga, they really prefer to do the face-to-face classes. Only if there's no COVID-19. Kung wala lang talagang COVID-19. But the problem right now is that they might want to have the limited face-to-face classes, but they're also scared of being infected of the COVID-19. But still, no? And if you are going to ask me personally, I still prefer to have the face-to-face classes. Sige po, next. Yeah, and that's the reason why the Commission on Higher Education and the Department of Health had issued a circular 2021-001, which is said to be the guidelines on the gradual reopening of campuses of higher education institutions for limited face-to-face during the COVID-19 pandemic. That's why, no, yung clamor to really have the limited face-to-face or yung face-to-face classes, no, yung clamor to really go back, no, is nandoon. However, we have to really devise a technique on how are we going to come back to the traditional method, no. So kaya nag-create, no, ang CHED and DOH nung tinatawag nating guidelines on gradual reopening of campuses. Next slide. Okay, the objective really is to give guidelines for the HEIs so that they can start reopening, no? They can start the gradual reopening of their classes. Next slide. Okay, but in our program, no, when we applied for the limited face-to-face, no, our main objective really is to ensure the continuity, no, of the VS Medical Technology program by implementing the training of our graduating student through flexible learning, limited face-to-face classes, and internship. Kasi nga, hindi pa rin tayo talaga makapag-full face-to-face. No? So hatiin pa rin natin. We have to devise, nandun pa rin kami sa limited face-to-face, but we opted to implement also the limited face-to-face classes and internship, no? With an intention of attaining the learning outcomes of the program by allowing the student to experience an actual training on basic laboratory procedures as an essential part of learner skills development in compliance also to Joint Memorandum Circular of 2021-001. Our purpose really is, of course, to give experiential learning, no? Especially na tayo that medtech really needs skills. Kailangan talaga natin ng skills. Yun na natin matutunan. Kaya kailangan natin ma-implement talaga ang internship, at least, no, the limited face-to-face internship. Next po. As we recalled, no, the initial JMC was issued in order to allow the programs including medicine, nursing, medtech, physical therapy, midwifery, and public health. But I know that right now, the dentistry, the pharmacy, and I think the optometry is also doing their guidelines, no, for the gradual reopening of their campuses. Next po. Okay, now in our case, I just want to share our experience on how did we come up, no, before we have been approved with approved or given an authority by the CHED, no, to have a gradual opening, no. There are processes that we have gone through, no. First is we conduct the survey on the number of the students that are willing or not willing to undergo the limited face-to-face. Kasi parang at that time, no, I remember second sem last academic year, no, we are preparing for application, no, and we were granted for this school year, no, for the limited face-to-face. We would want to know if there are students who are willing to undergo. Baka mamaya mag-open kami, no? But the students are not willing to have the limited face-to-face classes. And also, of course, the consensus of the faculty members, no? Baka mag-open tayo and then wala rin naman tayong mga faculty na willing, no, to have the limited face-to-face classes or internship. And then we have a coordination with our base hospital, the affiliate training laboratory, because we want to know also their readiness, their preparedness to accept the interns. No? And coordination meeting with affiliate training laboratory, we consider the number of interns that they can accept or they can allow to have their internship, no? Their schedule, the training plan, the safety protocol, which is very important, and other mandatory requirements such as the learning continuity plan of the institution, and also the because there should be a revision in the training protocols dahil nga hindi na to kagaya ng usual training natin before, no? So requirements of the affiliate training laboratory before deployment of interns. And what are the requirements, no, before they will accept interns? Because in our JMC, yung RT-PCR actually has not been removed, no? In the previous orientation sinama yon, pero nung lumabas yung signed JMC, hindi na nakasama yung RT-PCR, but the affiliate hospitals still require, no, the students to have their RT-PCR before they can be accepted for internship. So you have to know, no, we identify the requirements of the hospital before deploying our interns. Next slide po. And then we have a series of orientation and consultation with the parents and the students. And we review also the guidelines. May mga checklist po kasi yun, no, na binibigay. And we ensure that we have complied with the checklist and ensure compliance with the requirement as to the preparation of necessary documents, learning continuity plan, organization of the crisis management committee, and retrofitting of the facilities. Although in our case, we applied for possible school internship, but we did not pursue really, no, for the school internship because the hospital gave us a slot to our interns. But in case, no, let's say, sabi nga namin, kung hindi kaya ng ospital na tanggapin, kung halimbawa let's say we have 50 interns, kung 25 lang ang kaya niyang tanggapin, we will do the limited face-to-face internship using the facilities in the school. And the specimens will be coming from our laboratory. Doon namin kukunin. Hospital laboratory, no? And of course, we have to submit that to the CHED regional office for review, no, and schedule a visit. Next slide po. Okay, now the compliance that required, no, by the CHED is actually listed in the JMC. Nandun po naman nakalagay yun. There is the requirements is listed in the Annex F in particular, no, of the JMC 2021-001. So we just ensure that we have complied with all requirements written in the Annex F. Next slide. So I lifted the guidelines, no, as to the how lifted this from the CHED during the orientation, no, yung application and evaluation procedure. You just simply complete all the requirements, no, yung mga cover letter, the notarized certificate, name and position member of the CMC, self-assessment checklist, evaluation instrument, proof of consultations, and title and brief description of the laboratory courses that will be offered, no, by the HEI. Next po. Even the maximum number of students to be accommodated. The cyclical rotation, we followed still the 410 cycles, no? Ginamit pa rin namin yung 410 na yun. The students will be deployed 4 days, and they will have a quarantine, no, of 10 days. The health and safety protocol, the contingency plan. Sige po, next po. And then once that these papers or documents had been submitted, no, of course there will be an evaluation procedure that will be conducted by the CHED, the LGU, the IATF, no. Lahat po yun bibisita, pati ang DOH, no, bibisita po sila doon sa eskwelahan. Next po. And once you have been you pass the evaluation and you have completed the requirements, they will issue the validity of the authority, no. And normally they issue the validity of limited face-to-face for 2 semesters, no. That would take effect for 2 semesters. Next po. And that's the process, no, on how did we go through on the application of the limited face-to-face internship. Although there are challenges still, no. Right now, we have suspended the face-to-face internship due to the shifting of our quarantine criteria, no. Before we are in GCQ, but when we shifted to MECQ, we pulled out our students, and right now that we have changed into the quarantine classification, no? Hindi na natin ginagamit yung mga Qs, but we are now on alert level, And we have not resumed back our limited face-to-face internship because right now I think it is the call of the LGU, no, the local government unit, that will be imposing, no, if they will be allowing the face-to-face classes. But in Caloocan right now, the LGU had posted that still face-to-face classes will not be considered, will not be allowed at the moment. So that's it for my presentation. And if you have any queries, I'm very willing to answer it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dean Martel. We are all anticipating the limited face-to-face classes for us to really perform the tests and gain the necessary skills. The floor is now open for questions, and if you have questions, please type it in our YouTube chat corner, and we shall gladly ask them to our speaker. So the first question we have is, what are the most challenging issues that you have encountered in the internship or limited face-to-face classes?
Yes, yeah. There are actually a lot of challenging issues, no? Because you really have to justify to the to your school in terms of your needs, no, to retrofit your facilities. And as we know right now, no, when you retrofit, there are certain requirements, and of course, it implies also a budget, no, budget to the administration. And we know that because of the pandemic, every companies had been affected, no. Kaya challenge talaga when you will apply because it implies also expenses. Another thing, aside from that, no, from expenses, no, there is a challenge in terms of convincing your faculty to, because the students we know already, parang for the students, ano na yan eh, given factor na yan, meron na talagang willing to have their limited face-to-face, no? But we have to convince also the faculty, especially if the faculty has comorbidity, no? Talagang yun ang challenge na mahirap na to let them go back in the school, no, when there's no clear guidelines on how are we going to take care of the health of our faculty, no, like for instance insurance, no, hindi natin sila lahat kasi agad mapapabalik. Yeah, that's why in our case, instead of having our internship in the school, we opted to really deploy them in our training laboratory because of that concern, that issue, no? Because when we have our internship in the school, we ensure that the faculty are vaccinated. They have also, we ensure that they are insured, that covers COVID-19 infection. And lahat yun mag-i-entail sa expense kasi. Kaya yun talaga yung pinaka, siguro challenging na nakita ko. But the students, no, for the students naman, yeah, I think during our orientation, we were able to explain this to the parents. That's why the parents are also enlightened. But of course, there are also parents that are not yet ready, no, to have this face-to-face classes. Pero meron naman, no, kasi ang ating precaution diyan, ano eh, ang ating consideration rather, no, is that if the student will not undergo the limited face-to-face, they will not be allowed to graduate. Yun ang magiging pinaka-concern natin. Kaya yung ibang estudyante, they really would want to push, no, their internship if they do not really want to be delayed. So yun yung mga challenges, no, that we have encountered really. And mahirap yung sa part ng faculty because even though we were given authority, but if there's no faculty that will handle it in the classroom, it will be useless. That's why we opted to deploy our interns in the hospital.
So just to follow up, Dean Martel,
Yes.
a question from Dr. Lim. How did you address these challenges that you encountered in implementing the face-to-face meetings and internship?
Yes. We have certain, ano po, we have, madami, no? Madami, ma'am. We have, yeah, to ensure, no? We have to ensure na yung case na yon, meron talagang safety protocol that the hospital or the laboratory is implementing. We have an undertaking also. We we issued an undertaking to the students so that the liability, although I know that yung undertaking is not very strong in terms of legality, no? But at least this will appease the students and the university, no, that anything happens, it should be a combined liability. Hindi lang naman talaga dapat, although sa JMC kasi school talaga ang sasagot, no. So may mga undertaking, there's a series of orientation, including the infection control, lahat po yun, no, sinama namin yun. And yeah, series of orientation talaga. There's a series of orientation, undertaking, the protocols, no. Yeah, those are the things. We have to ensure lang na kumpleto po lahat yung aming mga guidelines, yung aming mga orientation, just to ensure po na ang gusto lang naman ng mga parents and ng students yung talagang hindi sila mai-infect, hindi sila mahawa at the course of their training. Pero the students, yung mga willing naman talaga, very much easier to convince naman sila to undergo the limited face-to-face. And what we did is, because the JMC requires only 576 training hours, what we did is just, we opted to have our online or virtual internship, and then we have the second semester for the limited face-to-face. But those who took the online or the virtual internship on the first semester, they will be deployed for the second semester. Just to ensure lang po na lahat ng aming mga requirements as needed by the CHED ay meron po siya. Nakalagay po siya lahat doon. Tsaka may mga undertaking po.
Sir, from the faculty, we have question po from Miss Gladys Aquino po.
Yes po, ma'am.
Hello, good afternoon, Dean.
Apa.
So the pandemic has been going on for almost 2 years now, and so on with the online class. So therefore, our students were left out as to speak with as to regards to skills, no, in the lab. So how are we going to compensate with this lack of exposure to actual laboratory? And where in fact, for example, most of them had been not in the laboratory for almost 2 years, and then kung mag-open yung face-to-face, internship ka agad. So are there any plans for that to compensate with those missed laboratory activities?
Yeah, actually the institution can create their own, should I say, bridging activity or bridging program, no, in order to address this lack of experiential activities, no, or experiential training. That's why the JMC 2021, no, is created, because under that JMC, the school can request, no, to open into a limited face-to-face only for the professional courses. Actually, pwede po tayong mag-request for if you intend to train the students not only for the internship, no, parang gusto natin yung mga professional courses, we can also do that, as long as we have to comply with the requirements that is being checked, no, by the Commission on Higher Education. You can also do the pre-internship, for instance, no. Let me mention the National University, no. What they applied really is the pre-internship program. That's not really an internship course yet. Hindi pa siya talaga internship, no. So before they will deploy their students to the training hospitals, at least they had experience yung mga laboratory procedures in their pre-internship training. So it's just up to the institution on how are they going to design, no, the training. In our case naman, we applied also supposedly the school, but only for the internship lang talaga yung in-apply namin because of yun nga, those challenges that we have experienced in terms of the availability of faculty. That's why we opted to apply for the internship. But if the school wants really to have a lot of hours of training, not just for the internship, they can apply. Basta po, kumpleto lang yung requirements natin, makakomply tayo para, let's say, gusto nyo pre-internship or yung third year, makandak doon po sa school ninyo, pinapayagan naman po siya, but there are certain requirements that needs to be complied. For now, kasi parang ma'am, sa talaga sa totoo lang, no, it's quite really difficult. Kaya nga ang pinaka-resolution na lang is the minimum requirement na lang na ginawa ng CHED, no, na at least hindi makagraduate yung bata if they have not experienced at least the limited face-to-face. Pero in reality, I do believe, I agree, no, na talagang kukulangin pa rin talaga, no, yung training. That's why kung ang school would initiate, no, to at least apply first for pre-internship, or if you have enough facilities to conduct the third year limited face-to-face for professional courses, ina-allow naman po yun. Nasa eskwelahan po kung ano yung kanilang magiging request.
Yes, sir.
We
have another question from one of our faculty members, Sir Toriano. Yes po, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hello, sir. Hello, Dean. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We are also finalizing our application for the limited face-to-face classes, and we are applying actually for the internship. I think that is much more necessary. However, looking into the the JMO rather, memorandum order, a lot of guidelines are required from the school, but not much from the training hospital. So there is a disparity. So you can see the disparity. So how come that if the school would be able to look into the guidelines and prepare the necessary guidelines, so we would be much safer as compared to the hospital wherein the COVID patients are. And if you would look into the JMO, the hospital is where the COVID patients are, but we don't require much of the guidelines from the hospital. So how would our interns be safe if they would be undergoing internship in the hospitals? And secondly, we have the option to have hospital internship or a school internship. So for me, it would be better if it would be a school internship because all the guidelines are there already. We have retrofitted, or we are trying to retrofit our facilities, so it would be much more safer to the students rather than allow them to go into the hospital. And another problem with the hospital is that hospital nowadays would not allow interns because it is too risky for them to accept interns. So if the university would be granted by CHED and IATF to conduct limited face-to-face classes, the students would all end up in school rather than having their internship in the hospitals.
Yes.
So that is the issue that we are looking into.
Apo. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
The stand of the Commission on Higher Education, actually talaga, no, they will not visit the training lab already. That's not part of their guideline, no. That's not part of their requirement that they will be looking at, no. Hindi natitingnan talaga, no. They will not visit the training laboratory anymore. But it is on the premise, no, they are considering, no, it is on the premise that since this is a hospital, no, parang nandun na yung presumption or nandun na yung ating presumption, sinasabi ng CHED, na the hospital is really have a concrete protocol. Parang yun sinasabi nila, they have a concrete protocol, they are ready, no, on how to manage the infection control as compared to the HEIs. Kaya talagang yung HEIs ang kanilang chine-check or ini-inspect. Yun ang kanilang stand, no, with that. Kumbaga, ang hospital, since hospital yan, we assume that they are already prepared, no, on how they are going to manage this infection control. Kaya parang sa kanila, pag doon na tinrain yung mga bata, parang there's no need for them to be inspected. But they only look for, normally when they inspect, no, they will just look for the video, no, mag-present lang ng videos nung training laboratory, no. They will look at the facilities na meron sila doon, but they will not actually visit. Yeah, it's true that this is a prerogative of the HEIs naman, no, on where they would really want to conduct their internship. That would be okay if the school will be retrofitted And if they will be uh, they will be creating their crisis management committee naman po, no? Magiging prepared sila. Yeah, and if you feel that it is much safer, this will be allowed and granted by CHED din po naman. Ina-allow din po naman nila yon if you opted to be trained. Ang isang question lang that they would probably ask, no? Kasi sinasabi nila, if you will be training the student in the school, no? You just have to ensure that they will have access to the specimen. Because if they will be using a normal specimen, the training would be in vain. No? Parang kung halimbawang mga specimen lang din nila ang gagawin, and if that would be an internship, parang hindi talaga siya nagiging experiential. That's why in our case naman, no, my answer to that is we have a base hospital and we can immediately coordinate with them, no, if you would want to get a specimen so that they can also experience the pathologic, they can experience examining the pathologic specimen. Yun lang, sir, ang ano nila, ang probably they would ask, no, if you will be doing the internship in the school, no, parang yung access natin for the specimen that we are going to use. Kasi kaya ang ginagrant nila before, I remember, no, is that would be okay if this is a pre-internship or if that would be a training on the, let's say, professional courses on the 3rd year. Pero yun nga, they will recommend na meron pa rin talagang hospital experience para part of their internship. But again, it's up to your institution naman po.
Yes, sir. Does this affect our requirements from PRC? For example, of those taking the board examination, would they be required some things regarding limited face-to-face classes in order for them to take it? Or as much as I know, wala pa namang guidelines or requirements from them. But sir, will that be coming?
Hindi naman, sir. I don't think wala naman kasi ang nire-require lang naman natin if that basta yung, sir, ang sinabi doon sa guideline natin sa JMC 2021, as long as the student has completed the limited face-to-face of 576 hours, that is already enough na yon for their training. Pwede nating i-certify na naka 576 training hours sila, and that will be accepted even by the PRC. Tingin ko naman wala naman magiging problem as long as na-certify ito at nanggaling ito sa CHED na. Ang ginawa na lang namin dyan, sir, kasi ang question namin is, kasi sa CMO natin, di ba, sir, 1,664 training hours. Kaya nag-conduct kami ng limited, ng online. Ang ginawa na lang namin, yung online or virtual internship nila, that will also be counted when we certify students, especially those students that are asking certificate of internship abroad. Kasi sa abroad talaga, di ba, sir, talagang they need yung maximum number of hours. So idadagdag na lang namin yon. Meron na lang kaming parang notation doon that this had been taken virtually. Yung kung para lang ma-comply yung 1,674, i-add namin doon sa 576 training hours para mag 1,000 plus pa rin yung training nila. So
yes, sir. Because that is also a problem not only in Metro Manila but also in other universities in other provinces who may not be able to conduct actually limited face-to-face classes. Not all of us have the money to actually retrofit our universities. So it would only be a few universities who would be able to conduct limited face-to-face classes following all the guidelines in the JMO. So that is why I am asking if our PRC, would we stop the student from taking the board examination if ever they would be not having any equivalent number of hours or even just online internship for that matter. So that is also what we look into. As far as the Philippine Women's University is concerned, we are pushing for the limited face-to-face classes as soon as we finish all our retrofittings here in the university. But as of now, we are conducting online internships still, and even our affiliates would not want to accept students because it would be risking the lives of the students as well. So
true.
even if we have the limited face-to-face classes and we opt to have hospital internship, that would be useless if our affiliates would not be accepting interns anyway. So we
Yeah.
rather opt for school internship because we are retrofitting our schools anyway, di ba?
Yes, sir.
So,
Mas okay na po 'yun, I think, lalo na kung talagang yeah, mahirap talagang mag-deploy right now of interns. Talagang they are not really accepting pa at this time. And yun nga, in our case naman kasi we have our base hospital, luckily, no? That's why we were granted. Yun, sir. But as of now, wala pa namang, kasi last time, di ba sir, na may mga gumraduate naman last time na hindi na kompleto rin yung kanilang training hours. We just put annotation that because of the pandemic, we give an alternative modalities. It has been accepted by CHED naman, and those students were able to catch up, no, for the board examination. Pero wala pa kasi talaga tayong graduate talaga, sir, right now na nag-limited face-to-face talaga. But the PRC naman is always with the PASMET every time that we are settling issues like this. I think maaano po naman yan. Mapag-uusapan din uli yan once that meron na siguro tayong makagraduate na nagkaroon ng limited face-to-face.
thank you very much, sir, for that one.
Thank you po, sir. Thank you.
Yes, Dean Martel, can we have the last two questions na lang po
Yes po, sige po.
from one of our viewers from YouTube. Ms. Lampano is asking if we are going to apply for pre-internship, do we need to retrofit our classrooms?
Yes po, definitely po. Talagang kailangan mag-retrofit po ng mga classrooms para po makakomply doon sa requirements.
Another question from our very own PW President, Mr. Marco Alfredo Benitez. Did your institution require all participants for limited face-to-face, including students, to be fully vaccinated?
No. The JMC did not really specifically require the vaccination. At that time, because at that time that the JMC has been created, hindi pa gaano kadami kasi yung mga vaccines. But we don't really require, but we prefer that they have to be vaccinated. But now that the vaccine is available, at the time that we deploy kasi we started in August, hindi pa ganun ka, I mean the students, no, it's not really a priority at that time. May mga pinayagan kami na hindi pa sila na vaksinan. Meron sila kami pinayagan because it's not really a requirement of the Joint Memorandum Circular. But we prefer. I even, those students that are asking for recommendation to be vaccinated because of internship, I even give recommendation, and the local government unit of that particular, that LGU, they accepted my recommendations. So pumapayag naman po sila na mavaksinan yung mga bata. Basta ibibigay lang po yung recommendation ng institution, and then attach yung authority to conduct limited face-to-face, they will give vaccines. Pero at that time kasi po, nung August kami nagsimula, hindi pa po namin inallow na kahit wala pang vaccine, we allow them to have their internship. But right now, we prefer na makapag-vaccine. In fact, even those that are doing the virtual internship right now, we are hoping that by next semester, kasi sila po yung mag-internship by next semester, we are hoping na lahat sila ay fully vaccinated na since the vaccine is now available.
I think that's all the questions too, sir. So the conduct and arrangement of the limited face-to-face classes may be the new normal as we continue with education and the possible trend in the post-pandemic era. To present the certificate of appreciation, may I call on Sir Sherwin Teriano.
The Philippine Women's University School of Medical Technology presents the Certificate of Appreciation to Dr. Ferdinand A. Mortel, our resource speaker, for imparting his invaluable knowledge in the webinar, Medical Technology, Recalibrating to Meet the Challenges of the Pandemic Era and Beyond, conducted on the 22nd day of September 2021. Again, Dean Mortel, congratulations and thank you very much.
Thank you very much po.
Congratulations, everyone, and to our speakers, thank you very much for enlightening us. Our topics this afternoon are the current issues that our profession is trying to address. As you continually adapt to the challenges of these times, it is imperative to be correctly informed, and in this, we have accomplished our objectives.
To wrap up this very informative and insightful forum, may I call on our School of Medical Technology Graduate School Coordinator, Dr. Nini Festenlin, for the closing remarks.
Our distinguished speakers, university officials, deans and program chairs of academic units, faculty, students, and guests. Good afternoon. We have appreciated the engagement and candor that you all have contributed to this webinar. This webinar with the theme, Medical Technology Recalibrating to Meet the Challenges of the Pandemic Era and Beyond, has come to grips with important changes taking place in the country and around the world, such as the rising number of COVID-19 positive cases, travel restrictions, the limited face-to-face meetings in schools, the need for online learning and distance education, and the urgent need for a gradual opening of our economy. Today, we have gained a better understanding of these challenges. Dr. Regina Berba discussed comprehensively the emerging COVID-19 variants, their unique structure that contributes to their high transmissibility. Viruses mutate over time, and variants have emerged, the so-called variants of interest, variants of concern, and variants of high consequence. Hence, the name of the game now is safety and protection from the virus. For this reason, the World Health Organization and the Interagency Task Force on the Management of Emerging Diseases have constantly reminded us to follow strictly the health protocols, such as the wearing of face masks and face shields, social or physical distancing, frequent hand washing, and others. These new health and safety standards have been established to ensure our safety and protection. But these measures are not enough to further combat COVID-19, which experts say will continue to infect many. The WHO and DOH have encouraged everyone to get vaccinated against the virus soonest. Ms. Felicitas Aquino showed us the changes in the blood cell morphology in patients with COVID-19 infection. Lymphopenia or neutrophilia, decreased lymphocytes with thrombocytopenia, increased prothrombin time, RBCs with basophilic stippling are some of these findings. Biochemical parameters such as ferritin, CRP, and interleukin-6 are also found to be elevated. All these parameters play a crucial role in the diagnosis, management, treatment, and prognosis of the disease. Specifically, the pandemic has posed a lot of challenges to medical technology schools, especially in conducting face-to-face laboratory classes. A very important component of the medical technology curriculum. Dr. Ferdinand Mortel has shared with us valuable insights and experiences regarding online learning during the pandemic. He also discussed the guidelines issued by CHED regarding the conduct of limited face-to-face laboratory classes and in internship training. two important CHED issuances that are expected to guide schools are guidelines on the implementation of flexible learning and guidelines on the gradual reopening of campuses of HEIs where limited face-to-face classes during the pandemic. On this note, on behalf of the School of Medical Technology faculty, staff, and students, I would like to thank Dr. Regina Berba, our guest speaker, for a very informative and comprehensive talk on coronavirus variants. In spite of her very busy schedule as chair, Hospital Control Unit of the UP Philippine General Hospital and head and consultant infectious disease section, the Medical City, she still has found time to be with us and share her experiences and expertise. I also would like to thank Dr. Ferdinand Mortel, the Dean of the Department of Medical Technology, Manila Central University, for sharing with us insights and guidelines in the implementation of limited face-to-face. We also express our gratitude to Ms. Felicitas Aquino, Chief Hematology and Hemostasis Section, Department of Pathology, Lung Center of the Philippines, for sharing with us their observation and findings on blood cell morphology changes in patients with COVID-19 infections. We are also truly grateful to the university administration under the dynamic leadership of President Marco Alfredo Benitez and Dr. Felina Yang, Chancellor and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs, for their generous support in making this event possible. Our thanks also go to the faculty and staff headed by Mr. Sherwin Toriano, Program Chair, School of Medical Technology, in coordination with the Medical Technology Executive Committee and the PWU ICT for organizing the MedTech Week celebration and for their tireless efforts in making this event a success amidst the pandemic. Most of all, we wish to express our thanks to all of you for actively participating in the webinar. Since the COVID-19 pandemic has continued to affect our lives, we will look forward to seeing you again in our future webinars. Have a nice day. Stay safe, healthy, and protected from COVID-19.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nini Festenlin. For the final announcement, kindly answer the evaluation form after the show. The evaluation form can be accessed through the QR code flashed on the screen. The evaluation link will also be posted in our official MedTech Facebook page. The certificates of participation will be given on or before October 2, 2021 for those who registered and evaluated.
We hope to see you all again in our future virtual events. Don't forget to wash your hands, eat healthy foods, and observe social distancing, and follow all the health protocols. Let us all remain strong during these trying times. It is with great hope that this will come to pass soon. Again, I'm Camille Miranda.
And I am Saida Recto, your Masters of Ceremonies for the School of Medical Technology Stronger and Brighter at 54. Thank you for joining us, Philippinians.
College
Women University is my good choice.
Everyone was friendly. They helped me to fit in from the first moment. They answer all my questions in a manner that I understand and in a perspective that I can relate to.
PWU has pioneered in innovative research and produced thousands of graduates who are recognized as leaders in their respective fields. PWU's College of Music and Arts was founded in 1947 and is today recognized as a Center of Excellence by the Philippines Commission on Higher Education for the quality of its research and the excellence in its teaching methods. The Philippine Women's University's School of Music proudly carries on its excellent tradition in research, performance, and music education.